Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to another faction preview video for the Fates Divided DLC, as we'll take a look at the 200 start for Liu Bei's faction. Now Liu Bei is untouched largely in the DLC. In the patch there will be some small changes for a few of his officers. We'll talk about a little bit of them. There's some things I can share and some things I can't share. But overall the faction is going to play very similarly as before. You still have Unity as your resource. It functions exactly the same way. It will help increase your prestige, unlock additional administrators, and help you increase your overall income from all sources. You gain Unity still by keeping your generals happy. You have a unique assignment that can increase your satisfaction. His faction unique units are still the E marksmen and E archers, as well as his specialty with all the militia units, which enjoys half off under Liu Bei. You also have the very strong tax collection building, the Shuhan tax collection, which has no penalties to public order and slight increase to peasantry income compared to the regular versions, and a militia replenishment on top. So it's really there for you to spam to reinforce your militia playstyle, and you have the option to unify or to confederate starting on turn 1, which is always kind of useful if you are into the diplomacy game. And you can integrate other Han factions by using your Unity point just by walking up to them to confederate them into your territory, or annex them, probably is a better term since we just talked about confederation here under Unify. Your cast of characters is your two sworn brothers, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, and Zhao Yun. Now Zhao Yun is a bit ahistorical here. He should not be with you at the start in 200. But he also should not be with you in the start in 194. So we're gonna let that go and let Zhao Yun work for Liu Bei just a little bit early. Zhao Yun will join Liu Bei very soon, in a few years. Zhao Yun pretty much disappeared from history for about 7 years, where he left both Gongsun Zan and Liu Bei. And there's not a lot of historical record for him during this period. The only source that I ever ran into that has the explanation for his disappearance is that his brother had died, so he needed to go back to his hometown to take care of his parents. And I believe the 7-year span is basically his parents probably also died, and then once they died, he didn't have an obligation at home, so he came out and rejoined Liu Bei because Gongsun Zan by that time was already destroyed and killed. So Zhao Yun will join Liu Bei a little bit, past 200, but we're gonna happily accept him here, as he really has no place to go in the game if we don't take him in, because Gongsun Zan is gone. Now Liu Bei's traits are still the same: humble, fraternal, and kind. And one thing to make note here is under fraternal and skills like this, where it has the decreased desire for higher office, there has been a change where they now tell you the exact amount. So each time you see the reduced desire from before, it was a minus 50% ratio of how much satisfaction they were losing. So what basically is happening here is if you have multiple ones, if you have 2 traits that gives this bonus, then you will have no desire for higher office. But if you have both of these and then you end up getting one that has increased desire for higher office, you can still net out to a slight increase. So that's why it was kind of weird or hard to tell from before. Now they actually gave you the real numbers, so that's definitely an improvement. Aside from that, Liu Bei's bonuses are the same, we mentioned them. Mainly focus on militias recruits +3 rank, minus 50% upkeep for all militia infantry, horses are expensive, and 100 points of faction support after you capture. In terms of the game map at this start, you might think he looks very similar to his 194 star, where he had a little bit more land. We'll look into the game of how things are and explain how he got here. But basically he has 3 counties in the beginning, compared to the couple factions we have mentioned so far, Liu Zhang, Cao Cao, and Yuan Shao, which have videos before this for previews. Liu Bei starts out relatively small, so some of you might like that. But basically he's not in a great position at this start. Cao Cao is at war with you, right on your border, and he's prepared to wipe you out. To the north, you do have an ally in Yuan Shao, but none of his vassals have a relationship with you, and you also are at war with Zhengjiang. So things are a little bit tricky. So let's hop into game and take a look at this start.
主公自统辖陶谦所托之地以来，治之严明，对其百姓皆一视同仁。其间虽有袁术为逆，亦已破之。此时祸端又起，曹操之势渐长，天下必将动荡不止。曹孟德倚仗兵多将广，以吞并广大领土，又以护卫天子之名，行不臣之实。但主公并非孤军奋战，袁绍权势之盛，足以与曹操等量齐观，但彼之优柔寡断，或将成其败亡之机，主公切不可掉以轻心。此外，我方得到多助，有一众黄金余部愿与主公共抗曹操。在主公与袁绍的盟军正面御敌时，在边境对曹军加以袭扰。假使时运不济，未能成事，主公可托付荆州刘表，其必将欣然应允。主公乃汉室之后，而如今匡扶汉室，重振龙威，成就汉室中心之重任，非主公莫属。
Alrighty, so that flyby introduced us a little bit, even though there's a little parts of history that kind of ignored, but we'll talk about that. Let's see, we don't really get an introduction here. A vassal no more. Cao Cao, the oppressive snake that he is, has proven himself an untrustworthy lord. Conflicts between him and Yuan Shao are inevitable, and now is the time to rise against this manipulative leader and gain your freedom. It is best to prepare now so that you are strong enough to strike should his eyes fall upon you. So this covers a little bit of history that the flyby kind of ignored, and we can talk about this real quick. They want us to control Xiapi's Xue Xian, which is probably the farmland, and it will give us 2,000. And this is a storyline, I guess. It's weird. Usually you get this one first, and then the mission. Anyways. Now is our time to break free from his rule. Cao Cao's eyes turn to his northern borders as the overwhelming forces of Yuan Shao move to depose him. Reports reach us daily of burning farmlands in Runan as the Yellow Turban forces continue to incite unrest and gather strength. Cao Cao is fighting a war on all fronts, a tribute to his ambition, but also a monument to his foolishness. Now we shall move in from the east and use this chaos to our advantage. Mount the offensive and take down Cao Cao. Both Sun Ce and Yuan Shao seems like they could be useful allies. Beware of Chen Deng in the south and the Bandit Queen to your north. Okay, so let's first take stock of how we got here. Now, for players of the game who might not be familiar with the history, it might look like, as we mentioned before, that Liu Bei retained control of the southern parts of the Xu province, at least 3 counties here, and it looks very similar to the 194 start, and even sort of similar to the 190 start, but a ton have happened to Liu Bei during this period of time. So in 194, Liu Bei took over the Xu province from the previous governor, Tao Qian, who died of old age. Liu Bei was invited by Tao Qian into this region to help him defend against Cao Cao after Tao Qian caused the death of Cao Cao's father, which is an in-game event in 190. And Liu Bei was convinced to stay in this area even though he was supposed to be the administrator of Pingyuan at the time, and Tao Qian gave him the position of the prefect, which is slightly under governor. And after he died, Liu Bei took over as governor because the clans already supported him, and even Tao Qian supported him to take over. And Tao Qian had 2 sons, we know them. Tao Shang's here, and there's also Tao Ying, who actually appears in your recruitment pool on turn 1. And Tao Ying is actually very important to gameplay here, in my opinion. We'll talk about him when we discuss our strategies for turn 1. But historically speaking, Tao Shang and Tao Ying were both not interested in government and have never worked in government under their father. During his father's entire climb through the Xu province, he never promoted his sons. His sons were just not interested in government or military, whereas Tao Qian was this military man who eventually became a mayor, worked his way up to become a prefect, eventually governor. So they were not interested in taking over for the province, so they were out of the question. And then the local clan, namely Miju's clan, were very wealthy landowners, merchants, merchant class, I guess. But his main business is owning land. So we have house flippers in modern day. Miju was a farm flipper. So his business, his family business, would be they would go cultivate barren land and convert them to farmland and then sell them. And farming is a very important part of the economy at this period because even government official salary was paid in grain. So you can understand that most of the country is based on a farming economy. So peasantry income is very important. And Miju was a big landowner. Therefore, he was extremely wealthy at this time. Very, very wealthy. We're talking about not just wealthy within the Xu province, but comparably wealthy throughout entire China at the time. So he played a huge role as advisor to Tao Qian, who used a lot of these powerful clans in the region to guide him. So Miju played a big role there, and when Liu Bei came in as a prefect, Miju married his sister, Lady Mi, to Liu Bei. So he became brother-in-law to Liu Bei. Therefore, when Tao Qian dies, obviously the Mi clan throws their support behind Liu Bei, which includes Mi Fang, who is Miju's brother. So that explains where this group is going to come from and their purpose here. Jian Yong was someone who was from Liu Bei's hometown, I believe. He has been with Liu Bei for a long time, and his role historically can be best described as Liu Bei's secretary. So messenger, secretary, that type of role for Liu Bei. And Tao Shang we talked about as the son for Tao Qian. He really doesn't have a role to be like an officer here, but since Tao Qian needs family members and everyone who exists in the game should be an officer, he is a sentinel here. Not very useful. We already talked about Lady Mi. We can talk about Chen Gui. So it's actually super interesting that Chen Gui is here. So if you guys know anything about the Chen clan here, he has a son named Chen Deng who has his own faction. So I don't know why the poor father isn't moving in with him. And Chen Gui and Chen Deng, as well as 3 other sons, I think they had 4 sons, he has 4 sons, worked under Liu Bu for a period of time. But they were locals, and they originally worked under Tao Qian as well. And their greatest contribution is that they tricked Liu Bu into believing that he should submit to the Han court under Cao Cao, even though at the same time Chen Deng, as the messenger to Cao Cao for Liu Bu, was working with Cao Cao in a plan to destroy Liu Bu. So they worked from the inside out to betray Liu Bu and cause his death eventually. And after Cao Cao beat Liu Bu, with Liu Bei's help of course, Chen Deng was awarded as the administrator of Guangling, where he made a name for himself as a pretty capable administrator and a military mind, because this region has been long coveted by Sun Ce in the south. And after Sun Ce took control of Lujiang around here, I mean, not necessarily Hefei, Wancheng, it's not in the game, I believe, but after he beat the forces there the second time, not the first time. The first time was when he was under Yuan Shu. He came through here, beat Lu Kang of the Liu clan. But the second time he was beating, I believe, Liu Xun, one of the lieutenants of Yuan Shu, who remained behind after Yuan Shu's death. But after he beat them, he marched his army east to try to take control of Guangling. And this time, Chen Deng's already the administrator here, and he defended it against Sun Ce's forces. And Sun Ce was forced to retreat south. And then he organized his men for a second assault, and Chen Deng repelled him again. So Chen Deng actually was quite capable and was pretty ambitious too. But unfortunately, he was a fan of sashimi at the time. I'm not kidding. But not sea fish sashimi, river fish sashimi. And he had a parasite issue that plagued him for years. And this was recorded because Hua Tuo was someone who treated him when he was 36. And when Hua Tuo treated him, Hua Tuo told him that he can't cleanse him of all the parasite right now. And in 3 years, he needs another dose of the medicine or he could die. And sure enough, when he was 39, he was no longer the administrator here. He got promoted to a place called Dongyang in the north, and he couldn't get treatment. And he ended up dying to the parasite from his eating habits. Basically, unclean fish with parasites. So that's Chen Dong's story, a talent that has died a little bit too young for other reasons. That's his father. I don't know why his father is under our faction. I guess it would kind of make sense if you think about it in the term of Liu Bei retained control of the Shu province. So the father stayed here and worked, the son got promoted by Cao Cao. But there's one big problem with this. And the big problem is that Liu Bei didn't retain control of the Shu province. You see in 194 in the start, Liu Bei has control of the whole province. Lu Bu gets defeated by Cao Cao, runs over here, asks Liu Bei for a place to stay. And for whatever reason, Liu Bei agrees. And you can see it two ways. It could be benevolence, he accepts and gives a place for Lu Bu to stay. Or it could be the fact that he wanted to use Liu Bu as an ally or as a general, either case, and he sheltered him to nurture that relationship. But we know with Liu Bu's track record, keeping him is like keeping a pet tiger and hoping that he won't bite your hand off, and it doesn't go well. Liu Bu betrays Liu Bei and takes over most of his land. Liu Bei runs away to Donghai to hide. And at this time, the reason why Liu Bei got betrayed is Yuan Shu was still a powerful force nearby. Yuan Shu and Liu Bei were at war. Liu Bei marches out, Liu Bu takes over because Yuan Shu was promised to pay Liu Bu 20,000 bushels of grain. And then Yuan Shu, being the rat he is, doesn't pay up. So Liu Bu ends up going to war with Yuan Shu over that. Liu Bei's weak. Liu Bu is like, I betrayed you for no reason, not even getting paid for it. So how about you come here and you live under me now? So Liu Bei became sort of the vassal figure in the relationship and lost the Shu province. So Liu Bei obviously don't like that. And Liu Bei rebuilt his force by stealing off of some Liu Bu's force. He stole Liu Bu's horse, he stole Liu Bu's gold, and he started communicating with Cao Cao, since that's a common enemy with Liu Bu. So Cao Cao and Liu Bei teamed up and eventually worked their magic in taking out Liu Bu, and also teamed up in taking out Yuan Shu. And Liu Bei was sent to the capital to become a court official. So Liu Bei had no land. The Shu province position went to someone named, I think, Che Shen, and he became the prefect. Liu Bei went to the capital, met the emperor, officially got his title as imperial uncle, basically recognized by the emperor for his bloodline, because the emperor at this time really needed allies. He needed friends that could help him stand up against Cao Cao. So Liu Bei was living in the capital all the way till spring of 200. What happened during the spring of 200 is Dongcheng, who in romance is the father-in-law to the emperor, because they had his daughter married to him, plotted with the emperor to assassinate Cao Cao. And the emperor, bit his finger, wrote a letter in blood, with his own blood. It was called Yi Zhao Shu. And he wrote a letter asking for help to rid of Cao Cao, that he's being held hostage basically as a puppet emperor, and then gave this letter in blood to Dongcheng to carry out of the palace, where Cao Cao had all the eunuchs spy on the emperor, of course. And after the letter got out, Dongcheng met up with some trustworthy officials and people who he thought were loyal to the Han, including Liu Bei, who would happen to be the imperial uncle, so clearly should be on the emperor's side. And they all signed the blood letter to say that we will participate in assassinating Cao Cao. Well, the assassination attempt happened around this time, spring of 200. It failed, and Liu Bei got out of there. Dongcheng and them got killed. Liu Bei got out, came to Xiapi, killed the prefect here, and took over. So Liu Bei just landed, and obviously if you're Cao Cao, you're out looking for revenge, because you got your hand on the letter, and you saw Liu Bei signed it. So that's why we find Cao Cao at war with Liu Bei at this point. So Liu Bei doesn't have firm control of the region, therefore he didn't stand a chance really against Cao Cao's forces here. It lasted about a month, and Liu Bei got wiped. And the time Liu Bei asked for help from all over the place, including Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao couldn't really do much. He wasn't even interested in attacking Xuchang during this period. We talked about his sixth son from romance, at least that was the rationale. But he did send his son Yuan Tan, who's close by, to provide safe passage for Liu Bei on his escape. And Liu Bei eventually made his way towards Yuan Shao and became sort of a vassal under him for a period, serving him and helping him plan some rear attack with the Yellow Turban. So that's why it's mentioned here. Liu Bei will be sent to this region to work with the Yellow Turbans to fight Cao Cao. First time it failed. Liu Bei got killed, and Liu Bei went back. Guandu happened. Guandu, Yuan Shao failed. Liu Bei tried to convince Yuan Shao again to come over in order to escape away from Yuan Shao. The second time wasn't genuine. He wasn't here to help. But the second time he would meet up with Gongdu. The first group of Yellow Turban was not led by Gongdu. The second group was. And after he met up with Gongdu, they just got out because Cai Yang came. They did kill Cai Yang, who was the administrator of Runan, but then they just ran. They fled to join up with Liu Bei. And that's where Liu Bei would end up before the Battle of Chibi. He would be in the northern part of the Jin province for a couple years, building his strength. But that's also when he would meet up with Zhao Yun again, not now. The rest of the roster are all very, very famous generals. You have your two sworn brothers and Zhao Yun, who starts out with the spear, which is accurate because the blue blade is not here yet. And there's really no changes to these generals. They're still the same. The one small buff I can kind of tease is that Guan Yu got buffed. Mainly this skill here, Unstoppable. Right now it's not being shown, but basically you get more damage from it, you get more melee evasion from it, and you become unbreakable from it. So that's going to buff Guan Yu quite a bit. Which is a welcome change because we mentioned before in the item overview, the weapon's not that strong and the armor is also not that strong. So for someone who's God of War, you can't just rest your laurels on this one use God of War attack that instantly kills the enemy general, assuming they have no evasion. Because if this whiffs, you pretty much lose all your power. So the best way to use God of War is definitely Wisdom the River them before using it. But then again, the argument can be made if you're going to Wisdom of the River them, where they lose all their melee evasion, you're going to win anyways, so it could be a bit wasteful, but still very powerful. Instant one-shot kill. There's no other ability like this. So that's it with the officers. We can talk a little bit about strategy of how you want to approach his first turn. You don't get any special items. You do start out with fairly decent army on the field. So the one big issue you're going to run into with Liu Bei, both here and historically, is that he has no good strategist at this time, right? On your roster, you have Mi Zhu, who's level 1. Not that impressive. You do somehow have Chen Gui, who I don't think you should have. But his skill tree is also more geared toward Administrator at this point than for War. Both of them don't have Flaming Shot, but he at least have Fire Arrow. So if you recruit him, give him a bunch of Archer Militias, they can still be very useful in sieges. He has a dependable Administrator, not a good background. Chen Gui has abundant talent. Better, but not as good as what you could have with Air. So you notice the unhappiness, mainly because we're on Legendary difficulty, and also because the court setup does not give you Air in the beginning. You can easily fix this by using Lady Mi, of course, who would be an excellent Air here. She starts out at a decent rank as well, rank 3, with 1 extra assignment unlocked and pretty close to getting both of these, so I think that will be great. You also get the plus 10 satisfaction. All this is very important for farming Unity. Speaking of farming for Unity, you start out with very low Unity, 120 out of 1,000, 250 at each breaking point. You do want to build up Unity, and you can only do so by going to war and just fighting, and also by keeping generals happy. So trying to get the temple is also crucial. This is your first target battle. Very simple with Liu Bei's army. This is where things become a little bit more difficult, right? You have to defend Sapheat, which is pretty nicely built in terms of the buildings, but you only have Guan Yu here. So the best option would be to put an Administrator inside, because immediately you get the retinue for help. And we do start out with, well, no Administrators here. Ooh. That is not good, actually. I thought you would actually have one. What rank are we? We're noble. Ooh, okay. That changes things. So we actually start at the very bottom, right? So from our prestige points, you can actually see them here. We have 1 army and 1 assignment from noble. And we need a bunch of prestige points to rank up, which we're not going to get. We're over our army capacity with 2 armies, so if we recall anyone, we can't send anyone out again. We only have one, okay, we have 1 minister for the peasantry income, which is good. The position is actually pretty important for Liu Bei because it doesn't matter who you put in there, you get the 50% peasantry and you're going to spam tax collection building everywhere, right? This is just so strong. 0 cost building that gives 260 base peasantry and 15% militia replenishment. And someone mentioned, I haven't checked this out myself, but someone mentioned that the replenishment cap of 50% has been removed. So you can actually go over 50 now. Therefore, getting that 15% for militia might be very handy. And if this is the case where we can't send any armies out on the field because we're over the limit and we can't get an administrator out because we don't have an administrator slot due to low rank, what we will have to do is just recruit a unit here, right? We wouldn't recall Guan Yu. We would need to just add units to him to maintain the number of men on the field. And the best character to add is actually Tao Ying. He would be expensive. Now the reason why Tao Ying is good here is because they changed his traits. So if we come over here and take a look at him, here, he has Burin now, which I don't think he had before. Makes him incredibly useful. So I think you can grab him, and once you, even if you have administrator, he will be a good administrator because he will have the basic skill tree for champions. And once he has that, he would have 20% peasantry on him. He would have food. He would have high resolve for population growth, a little bit of industry boost on him as well. And then Burin will have 10% on all sources. So that's great. So here it doesn't say what increased ambition gained as administrator. There's no value for that, which I feel like that's something else they should probably show, even though I think the percentage there is very small. So it's different from the desire for higher office. But overall, I think he would make a very useful general for you, worthy a recruit. But I think the order you want to do things, get the heir, because you could get all the bonuses for happiness, and then there's no redeployment, I believe, right? So that wouldn't really matter. But yeah, Burin trade will help you win. Probably want to pull them back towards the city. You probably want to upgrade this so that you can build your tax collection. And in terms of tax collection, you want to spam that reform route early on. Grab this, grab this, grab this. It's basically 260 at every single commandery. Pretty much what you want to do playing as Liu Bei. You do start out with the character salary discount here, +8 to commander. I think every faction, most of the big faction with characters probably get this one just to help out their character salary situation in the beginning. A deep investment to red tree, which is not bad because if you want the 10% replenishment, especially now with no top cap, you could actually get like, you know, pretty much one turn mustering, because if you have, let's say, 70% replenishment and then another 15%-ish mustering bonus, you can get your troops ready in one turn, which is pretty good. So maybe this is worthy of a visit now. A little bit of green tree, I guess it makes sense given where we are in the central plain. Building upkeep, this is an interesting one. Like this is one I probably would never get, especially since we're starting quite small. It's not like we're Cao Cao with 30 counties at the beginning. We only have 3, so this is probably a wasteful one. We probably would prefer this or somehow give us a school one, and we don't have to think about building a school ourselves. But that's pretty much where things stand. We do have to be careful. We are technically surrounded by enemies, because if you take note, even though Chen Deng and us are not at war, he is Cao Cao's ally. So it could be any turn that he could turn on you. That's the issue. But as a player, given that you have so many strong generals, as long as you don't lose Sapi on the first turn, right, you can pull Guan Yu back. This is not super strong. You could even do a risky move where you have Guan Yu ambush outside and try to use the garrison along with Guan Yu to do some sort of ambush hit where Guan Yu charge in, try to wipe out the trebuchet. Maybe it's not even needed. Like one trebuchet level 1, it's not going to swing a siege battle. So you can just pull back and defend here. Unfortunately, no administrator, so that would not work. That would have been a neat way to put Tao Ying in with some units and also apply the Burin debuff at the same time. Now you have to spend the money to recruit him onto Guan Yu. But take this, gives you a little bit more food, gives you the upgrade option here, go for more tax, take the temple, start building unity, then you would actually get administrator. Each tier here gets you 1 extra, and go from there. You definitely rewrite history here. You're not going to get wiped in a month. You're going to be able to wipe most of Cao Cao's holdings and threaten to take the emperor. And speaking of the emperor, we do have the highest imperial favor at the start of the game, which might not mean much by now because you get some bonuses, and it's going to drop when you go to war with Cao Cao because you're technically fighting the guy who has the emperor, so it's going to hurt a little bit. But if you maintain yours at a high rate throughout the campaign, I'm sure once Cao Cao loses control of the emperor, even if you don't take it physically, you can lower his and maybe he'll just come to you. That would be quite interesting. But I'm pretty sure since he's so close, since emperor is kind of misplaced here in Suiyang instead of Xuchang, but I think that might be another issue because Xuchang is not technically in Chuan either. It's just the limitations of the game map. But I still think maybe they should move it. I think many of you have mentioned this already. Move the emperor away a little bit closer to the threat from Yuan Shao, which is what made Guandu very important because it was basically the ferry that linked Yuan Shao towards Xuchang. Not the ferry for the Yellow River. It was a small river on this side. And Guandu, even the name, Guan here would mean like municipal, and Du means ferry. So the location name Battle Guandu is battle over a crossing in the river. Technically not just a crossing. Cao Cao basically encamped on one side of the river, and Yuan Shao came in and tried to take the encampment, pretty much. So that's where things stand for Liu Bei's faction. Not too much to talk about. Everything's very familiar. All the characters very similar. So you're pretty much going onto an offensive attempt to push back Cao Cao early on. Wipe this army out. He has to recall him somewhere else. You're literally 1 turn away, like 2 turns away from capturing the emperor and having the imperial decree under your command to push for deals. And things will go easier from there. I think once Cao Cao gets teamed up by all the AIs and you as a player, it should be much easier to play. So I don't think this campaign is hard because you do have the tools to beat him. This plus the garrison, I'm pretty sure you can beat Cao Cao and Xun Yue here. So yeah, it's up to you as a player. Hopefully you guys enjoy this guide or this preview, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye!